Welcome back to another SCBWI featured illustrator interview. My name is Tamika Grooms, and I'm the Design and Illustration Manager for SCBWI. Every month, we select an Illustrator member to spotlight on the SCBWI website and social media pages to highlight the work that they're doing in the children's illustration market. This month's featured illustrator is Kelsey Grass. Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us here today. I am so happy to have you here with me to talk and so that we can learn more about you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get into it. I just want to tell you the first time I kind of learned about your work was when you submitted artwork on the SCBWI Draw This prompt. I don't remember how many months ago it was, but
Yeah.
that's when I came to the awareness of Kelsey Grass. And you were one of the people that we selected for that month. So, and then since then, and probably prior to that as well, you've been building your career. This past summer, you won the SCBWI Student Illustrator Scholarship for the conference. So I know you've been doing this work for a while, and I'm really happy to have a chance to actually talk to you and learn more about your work. So let's get into it. Okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. So when I was looking at your website, the way in my mind that I started describing your work was mysterious, mythical movement.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good word for it.
It's my personal description.
I like that.
But you have like, it seems like some of the topics that you really enjoy, and correct me if I'm wrong, tends to be in the realm of these kind of mysterious animals, creatures, things that are possibly imagined, but also might have some historical context as well. Tell us a little bit about what that inspiration comes from. Why are you drawn towards that? Just give us something.
Yeah. So yeah, I love drawing like magical, mystical things. I always say that my work is a little bit magical realism, because I get a lot of inspiration from like my local area and where I'm living, and just like general imagination. I grew up in Maine in like a really rural area as an only child. So it was like a lot of trying to make your own fun. But I had a ton of cousins. So it's like this dichotomy between like playing with my cousins all the time and like having adventures in the woods and coming up with all these, I don't know, adventures that you would go on. And then like going home and trying to make fun for myself as well. So I was reading a lot of books and drawing a lot and crafting a lot. And so, so now when I do a lot of illustrations for kids, I try to like think back about what was I doing when I was a kid? Like what were the things that I was doing? What were the things I was imagining? So I loved like living in the pine forests. And so I love drawing pine trees and coming up with these adventures that kids could go on. And I think animals sometimes is partially because I was an only kid and, I had pets and that's who I kind of like played with and things like that. So, yeah.
Were you always interested in being an illustrator or a storyteller?
I always loved like coming up with stories. Like I remember as a kid, drawing comics, and I had an old typewriter that I would type on. And I always thought that was really cool. So I'd write stories on that. I didn't really know if I like what I wanted to do with art. I knew I wanted to do art in some capacity. So I went to school for art at Massachusetts College of Art. And the sophomore year, you had to choose. You had to like finally narrow it down and figure out which major you wanted to do. So I really loved illustration because it had like this narrative quality. You could tell stories with it, versus a lot of the other majors I thought didn't quite fit. I really wanted to draw a lot, so that was kind of what I was leaning towards. So that's what I ended up going for.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really enjoyed about your website is that even though you have a lot of personal work there, you actually take the time to explain what the motivation for that personal work might be, what the backstory of the illustration is. And you also have a few examples of how you put together book dummies so that you're demonstrating clearly that you know how to tell a story. And I hope that you write as well. It seems like you probably do. Is that the case?
I write some stories. definitely more of a confident illustrator at the moment. But I love coming up with stories in my head, and whether I write them down or if I just have a backstory for a certain character, I always have these kind of like backstories that I come up with when I'm drawing. I'll be like, okay, so this character on their time off, they'll be like doing I don't know, they do this for a hobby, and they wear socks like this because they can't find the other pair. So I come up with
Something that
these little
everybody can
stories for them. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely can all relate to that one for sure.
Yep.
So I want to take a really quick look at your website. I'm going to share my screen. So this first illustration, this is the one that I actually first learned about your work from.
Yeah.
And it's such a delightful image. It's, all kids, not all kids, many kids are scared of the dark. And I know I'm speaking from self-experience, but I always had a night light when I was a kid. And I would have loved to have a night like this. So I really appreciate, this animation that you added to it, just to kind of just add that next layer of, what can this illustration do? So I really love that piece. And the illustration for this month also has the sketches that you did prior to creating the illustration.
Yes, yeah.
And as well as your character design. So tell us a little bit first about this, and then I know you may have some things that you want to share with everyone as well, but tell us a little bit about this inspiration.
So this one specifically is actually part of my thesis that I'm doing for my grad program. We were kind of given the prompt to come up with a like dream project, pretty much, of like, if you could do anything, if you could draw anything, what would you draw? And something that I'm always drawn to is like magical things, kind of like we talked about. So I love drawing witches and little magical bits and pieces here and there. So I came up with this story about this little girl who she likes to make hats. Again, kind of like drawing back my personal experiences of, being a crafty, artsy person. So I came up with this little story about a girl who makes hats, and this is one of the drawings from it. So yeah.
I'm going to go find the other drawings too, because I know they're here.
Yeah, I think there's one at the bottom.
Yeah. There she is.
Yeah.
And so she is having, tell us a little bit about this. I won't add my here too.
No worries. So it's kind of this story about her making these hats, and she gets a little embarrassed because it's definitely not as pretty as everybody else's. She's kind of working with the tools that she has, and her hats are a little patchy and not perfect. So she gets nervous about sharing with her friends. And so this scene right here is kind of her walking through the little town there, and she sees all these like ads and boxes and things of all these perfect hats.
Yeah. So there, like, I could see very easily a story for that character, and you've laid it out so well. And I believe there might be a third image that
I have that I don't know if I have it on my website yet, but yeah.
So if you all have a chance, go to Kelsey's website, because she's got a lot of art here. She's got some editorial design examples. She's got the sketchbook examples. So there's really some delightful things. And she's even got illustrations from this past conference that we just had. So make sure you check it out. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So Kelsey, tell us a little bit about your art process or anything else. I know you said you may have some things to share. Tell us about your art process and anything else.
Yeah, I can actually share with you some sketches for that drawing that you just shared. So I'll share my screen. So I think usually when I start a drawing, or when I start a series of drawings, I guess I like to really figure out the characters. So I start with drawing my character a lot, trying to figure out what their backstory is, what they're wearing, what colors they're wearing, all these things, figuring out what materials I'm going to use and things like that. So for that drawing, I have my main character here, and you can see that I did a few different versions of her, and I ended up going with more of this kind of version with like digital art, and I just like the shape of her. here.
Mhm.
And so after I figure out characters, I will go on to do really pretty rough sketches. These are like my little thumbnails, and I like to do like a value sketch. So then I can figure out my lighting. And you might have noticed that I really like doing like kind of dramatic lighting, I guess. With these, I like these little bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah.
So I'll do I'll do a thumbnail, and then I'll draw on top of my thumbnail with a more refined sketch. So you can see it's starting to come together here. And I start to figure out things and where things are going to go, and things might change a little bit, as you can see. But for the most part, it's pretty much staying the same as that thumbnail. I'll continue. I like continue to redraw on top of my sketches and refine my line work and get it all nice and pretty. And then I'll come up with different color ideas. So for this one, I tried a couple different colors, but I ended up going with this blue one because I thought it just worked better. I guess it was more like limited color palette that I liked. And then I'll go into my finished. And this one was all done digitally. So I usually work digitally. I just use my iPad and Procreate. And yeah, this whole thing was done digitally, all the sketches and thumbnails and all that.
Before you go on, one thing I noticed that I don't think I consciously noticed when I saw this image before, it has a visual rhythm to it. You know, because I love the hats, I love the cat, I love the character and the colors and all the things. But when you look at the different elements in the design that you have throughout the whole image, going across the image, it's like there's this rhythm with the hats, there's this rhythm with the repetition in the drawers, in the yarn that's in the top, and even with all the little things that are on top of the desk. I can't figure out the word I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And then it just lands right there on the character, and you have a spotlight on her. So even with all of these things that are going on around the character, it lands there, and it shows that she is the main thing, even though she has all this magic that she's working around her. So I think it's a really successful piece.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So do you always work digitally, or how do you work?
Yeah, I usually work digitally. I just think it's easier sometimes. I do work in my sketchbook once in a while. I have, let's see, I have lots of sketches in here, but I will sometimes go back and forth between I'll sketch digitally and then I'll print it off and then do it traditionally, and then I'll scan it back in and color it. And so sometimes I mix that up, but I really like coloring digitally. So I think that's where it all kind of like comes together. I think it just works better for me.
Okay. So I asked that question, but I kind of sort of already knew the answer. I just wanted to bring everybody else into our conversation.
Yeah.
If you all want to check out Kelsey's work, that she has a video on the last page of, I believe it's the about page of your website. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a nice little process video so that you can see how Kelsey actually starts developing a piece. So I hope that you all go check that out. Kelsey, so here's a question for you. And I like asking artists this question because I think we all run into it sometimes. What do you do when you run into challenges with developing work? Do you have a way to get out of roadblocks, whether it's procrastination or staring at the white page that you don't know what to do with, you know? What tools do you use?
Yeah, I definitely run into artist block once in a while here. Let's see. So it kind of depends on what the situation is. Like sometimes I just really am trying to make art and it's just not coming together, or I'm not feeling very inspired. And sometimes I just have to take a break from drawing and staring at the paper and figure out something else to do. So whether that's I like to go hiking and walking my dog and going for runs, and that's really helpful because then I don't really have to like think about too much. I love doing house chores, so like clean, or like I recently bought a house with my partner, and that's been a big big project. So I'll do that for a little bit. And I guess finding things that are a little bit more monotonous that I don't really have to think too much about kind of frees up my brain to start thinking about going back to the drawing board and just taking a break, I guess, for that. But then sometimes I will go back to like my old favorites of things that I like to draw and just try to like, okay, if I can draw this one thing, then I can draw something else. So I'll draw witches or princesses or little cabins on the coast of Maine and things that I just know how to draw and that are really easy to draw and for me. And just like these little simple things. And if I can just draw that, then I can go on to something a little bit bigger and more complex and work my way back up.
Yeah, that's great advice. Sometimes it really is just, getting yourself to be in the space of creating, not being tied to what you create, but just being in the space to create. So that's all of that is great advice. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us a little bit about why you joined SCBWI.
So I graduated college a few years ago, and after I left college, I had this illustration degree and I didn't really know what to do with it. I liked drawing and I liked drawing characters, but I didn't really know like where to go, what to do. And so I was doing some editorial things. I worked some office jobs and I ended up landing at this college called Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design. And when I was there, I had the opportunity to take some children's book classes. And I met some teachers there who were really great. And I really kind of liked drawing for children's books. And they recommended, like, if this is something that you liked, then you should definitely check out SCBWI. And I was really lucky at the time. So I was living in Denver and they have a really robust SCBWI team down there. And there was tons of conferences and meetups and things like that to go to. So I signed up, and even though the pandemic was going on at the time, there was lots of virtual events, which was great, and meeting other artists and joining critique groups. And it kind of spiraled into this thing that was like really helpful for me to learn more about children's books and this thing that I was like finally interested in the direction that I really wanted to go in. And it was an easy place to find all these resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't wait to see what else is next on your journey. It's been a pleasure just watching you over it feels like it's been a year now, but it might not have been long. But it's been a pleasure just watching to see how your artwork is developing and where you're going to go. So we can't wait to see what's next. Tell us a little bit more about how we can learn more about your work.
I'm on social media, Kelsey Grass _art on Instagram and Facebook, and my website, which we had up earlier. And I have a little YouTube channel that you could check out. So you can find me on all those places.
Perfect. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much.